Welcome everybody to the Clinical Entrepreneurs Programme Northern Ireland. So my name's Joanne Rhodes, I'm from the Health Innovation Research Alliance Northern Ireland, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today. So I'm really delighted to welcome you today, so thank you very much for dialing in and giving your time. I'd just like to run you through the agenda on the next slide. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction to where this all started, and then I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Professor Tony Young, who is the founder of NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme from NHS England, who's going to talk us through the programme and some of the successes and case studies. And then hand over to Professor Ian Young, Chief Scientific Advisor for the Department of Health, Northern Ireland. He's going to talk us through research and innovation in health and social care, and again, present some great case studies. Then I'm really pleased we've got some Irish clinical entrepreneurs to share their stories with us today. So Bernadette Porter from NeuroResponse and Dr. Scott Martin from Recourse AI is going to share some of their fantastic stories. Then we have Gary McCausland from Invest Northern Ireland, who's going to talk about some of the entrepreneurship pathways and support and the whole community here in Northern Ireland to begin to connect some of you into. And then we've also got a question and answer panel. So please, if you have questions that occur along the way, please stick them into the Q&A, and then we can get those. And if they're addressed to specific people, then also do that, and I can do my best to direct them, and we can get those answers for you. So next slide, please. So HARANI has been in existence since 2019, and it's a not-for-profit alliance of the universities, so Queen's and Ulster, healthcare providers and the industry across Northern Ireland to unlock growth and collaboration for health and prosperity for the businesses, for patients, for the citizens of Northern Ireland. And I'm absolutely delighted to facilitate access for Northern Ireland's clinical staff NHS workforce to the Clinical Entrepreneurs Programme, and that's opened up for 21-22 in Northern Ireland. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background about Northern Ireland, and just to set the scene. I'm sure you all know this because you are from here, but perhaps for Professor Young's benefit, I'll talk you through here. So it's two universities. There's around 4,500 graduates a year and over 1,000 researchers. You're drawn from 5 NHS trusts, and there's over 80,000 staff in Northern Ireland working in health, in the NHS, sorry, and that 100,000, I think, across health and life sciences, and there's 3 clinical research facilities. There's over £400 million of research income and over 300 health and life science companies, which for a population of 1.8 million, I think it really shows that it punches above its weight. There's also a vibrant engineering, technology and digital sector that's beginning to unlock, and Northern Ireland's really developing that pillar in that entrepreneurial field. So that's something I think that would be fantastic to connect to some clinical knowledge into. Next slide, please. So really across Northern Ireland, the health and life science ecosystem that we have here that I've just explained, the clinical insight's absolutely critical, and I think you'll obviously agree. We've got academia working on industry collaborations and spin-outs, developing new companies. We've got larger industry such as Randox and Almac, and then obviously what the global industry here in healthcare, in pharmaceuticals, in medical technologies, in administrative and technology platforms, and they can provide knowledge to develop new ideas. However, in clinical, really you're at the cutting edge of where those problems are, those challenges that need to be solved, and I think it's absolutely critically important that you as a workforce are able to really crystallize those problems and work across those whole frames with academia, industry, and then through into government to really be able to ask for what you need and be able to deliver the best care for your patients and the most beneficial work environment for you as well. And I think your presence in that ecosystem is absolutely critical to amplify the knowledge and develop ways where we can exchange those complementary skills. Next slide, please. So this is not a new question to you, but I just really wanted to set the scene really to tee up Tony's talk. Why is innovation important in health? And obviously it's important to improve patient safety, the quality of care, and create a good working environment. Health services are closest to and understand the real challenges on a daily basis. So what's been stopping innovation from being unleashed? Why is it so challenging? Next slide, please. So obviously healthcare delivery pathways, as you know, are complex. Next slide. The demands on your time mean the priority is often for frontline service delivery, and I think currently that's front and center of our minds. And so often long-term innovation or other resources to develop things that are actually going to improve efficiency or benefit patients, sometimes there's just not the bandwidth to develop that as well. Next slide, please. And then also, you as healthcare professionals, some of those entrepreneurial skills that maybe are out in other different communities, they're not readily available to you. And then the connections to the wider knowledge and skills aren't present, and often find that you get siloed and don't develop the network perhaps that you need that could help you develop your ideas. So next slide, please. So what happens? So really just wanted to use this to illustrate push versus pull innovation in health. So the pull innovation, push innovation, which is at the top of the slide, which is we've got industry, we've got academics doing R&D, they put something into production in technology, they market it, but is there really a need? And this may be contentious, but we've got Fitbits, we've got Apple Watches, Viagra was developed, and there's all sorts of other tech that's been pushed through. But actually the need for that needs to be created, and is that up to the healthcare service to actually begin to adopt that? So I think we all, I'm sure, are beginning to be exposed to the fact that there's an express market need in pull innovations, where actually that feeds into the R&D, and there's a co-development for production. The marketing falls into place because we can absolutely understand the need. And I've just got an example here, Elemental, which is from Derry, and it's a social prescribing company. And again, that was developed from an area of need, and the two founders of Elemental actually set that up because they were from social care and the community, and they really understood what was needed. And so those are the solutions that I think we need to begin to develop, and hoping that we can see more of those, and hopefully we'll hear more about some of the things that have come out of the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme following that. Next slide, please. So just to round this up, really, in Northern Ireland, in our population of 1.8 million, 1 in 20 people work in health and life sciences, and I think it's 1 in 21 actually work in the health service. So there's a huge amount of people there who understand the problems. And for me, in my role as Chief Executive of Harani, it's critical that you as the health workforce are recognised as innovation partners and have a pathway through to connect to industry and the wider arena. And there's an investment in training and provision of bespoke tools, and the knowledge network is needed to unleash that potential. And so hopefully this is what the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme is going to begin to provide. And I just wanted to leave you with a quote, really. So from Mark McCary, who's the Acting Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Medical and Dental Training Agency. He said, "When I meet with staff across health and social care, I'm continually impressed with the innovative ideas that they have to improve patient care. The introduction of the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme provides the potential for such thinking to gain further traction within the service through direct support, development and investment." And I think that says it all. There's a number of innovative ideas. Let's help find the pathway through to help develop those into meaningful solutions. Next slide, please. So I'm absolutely so pleased that we're able to welcome Professor Tony Young, OBE, who's the National Clinical Lead for Innovation for NHS England, to speak to you today about the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, and really pleased he can tell us about how we're going to future-proof the decade ahead. So over to you, Tony.
Thanks so much, Joanne, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to, I would say, sunny Southend-on-Sea, which is where I'm a consultant surgeon down in Essex, but it's not been very sunny today at all. It normally is, though. So I'm really thrilled and delighted to be here talking to you this evening. This is something I've been so passionate about for a long time. And I was really thrilled when I was introduced to Joanne, and then to lots of people in Northern Ireland who kind of shared the same view and dream and vision of what we really could be doing in healthcare and something different. So I'm going to run you through a whole lot of things. I've got about 15 minutes and we'll move quite quickly, but really happy to take some questions at the end as we go through this. So I am, first of all, I'm a consultant surgeon, a urologist in Essex. I'm sometimes called a plumber from Essex, but I do human plumbing, not the other sort, although occasionally I do the other sort too, to be fair. I am an associate medical director in Mid and South Essex. I'm chair of innovation and entrepreneurship at ARU, and partly that because I did 4 startups when I was a junior doctor, raised £5 million in private sector funds to drive those 4 companies forward and exited them all. Some were great, some were total disasters, but I learned a lot along the way. And I'm also the National Clinical Lead for Innovation at NHS England Improvements. So next slide, please. So we face a lot of problems at the moment, don't we, in healthcare? And this was published in NHS England 2 years ago, our long-term plan, our vision for the future of healthcare. What were the challenges we faced, and how could we really address those? And even though we've had a change of chief executive at NHS England very recently, the challenges we're facing haven't significantly changed. In fact, they've been amplified by the pandemic, haven't they? Next slide, please. So it is that question that the long-term plan posed for us, is how do we future-proof for the coming decade? Getting a bit further than that, it's a bit difficult to see that bar, really, isn't it? So how do we make sure our health service is going to be fit for purpose moving forward? Next slide, please. So what we drew up, this is the distillation of that long document. And for you, very quickly, some key themes that came out of that was, how do we really move from somewhere to everywhere? So there's some excellent centres in some places, but how can we have excellence everywhere in the health service? There was an ambition. We have 100 million outpatients a year. How can we make 30 million of them, take them out of the hospitals and make them virtual? We wanted to halve maternity-related death by 2025, improve early cancer diagnosis from 50% where it sits now to 75%, which will make a big impact on that. And you know, I used to, before the pandemic, I used to stand up in front of particularly audiences of clinicians. You know what they're like with someone from NHS England. I'd come up with these claims and they would laugh, and they would especially laugh at everyone has access to a remote consultation, because they would say, it'll never happen. This is the NHS. Really? And then now I hope that it doesn't take a pandemic to happen to get everything else to go forward. But we switched to remote consultation really rapidly right across our nation to make sure those core services could still be provided. And of course, transforming and supporting the workforce, more important than ever now, particularly with everything that's gone through in the last 18 months, and the pandemic has just laid bare the health inequalities, the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda, and right across our workforce, hasn't it? Next slide, please. And that all sounds great, and I really get that, but actually we're looking at the future, aren't we? We're looking at how are we going to bring those latest greatest things. I mean, I've been nearly 27 years, is it, qualified now, and you know what has changed in surgery and what I'm doing. It's slow, it's not a lot, and people always talk about the rapid changes coming on. Okay, we've had keyhole surgery and robotic surgery now, but other things, well, I like this quote from Alan Kay, who is the inventor of the bitmap, so you'll all have a bit of his invention on the phones in your pockets at the moment, when he developed that in Xerox PARC over in the west coast of the States. And he said the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And, you know, I kind of think it is. And who better to invent that future than the people who are on the front line, who identify the key problems and challenges. So you'll also have to, the reason I've got earplugs is you'll have to forgive me. I still have 2 children outside that study door, even though it's closed, who, even though I've asked to be quiet, will just do what they want to do. So there we are. Next slide, please. And you know, there's this promise of technology, isn't there? You'll have heard, you'll have seen it. You see it on the Consumer Electronics Show. You hear it if you go on the speaking circuit in the United States. And in fact, they speak about technology with almost an evangelical zeal, don't they, in the United States? This is going to change everything, whether it's the omics, the genome, that whole personalized medicine area, the microbiome, the proteome, the exposome, all those things. But how does that come together with machine learning and artificial intelligence, giving us ability to predict or predictalytics around healthcare, but then digital and mHealth, digital therapeutics, advanced technology, ultra connectivity, everything working together, particularly through 5G networks, social networkings and inclusion being really important as well, and moving from patient-centered care to people-centered care. Why do we exempt healthy people from healthcare? Well, we should keep healthy people healthy, shouldn't we, as we move forward? So all that is going on, and we're hearing about it and seeing it, but how are we tangibly realizing that in the National Health Service so our patients get access to the latest, greatest things? And most importantly, next slide, how are we training our workforce to deliver this? It sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds like this could really help us with so many of the things. I was listening yesterday to a talk from a colleague of mine at NHSX on the great work we've done on virtual wards in COVID, in managing patients with monitoring at home, and then intervening appropriately under supervision. But how are we training and upskilling our workforce? Well, I looked across the world and I couldn't find anywhere that was systematically bringing this all together. And of course, some of the latest, greatest things that happen come out of the startup world, don't they? The things that are changing our lives at this moment in time. But how are we supporting that in the NHS, that startup world? So we support people who want clinicians or people who work in the NHS who want to be academics. We support people who want to be leaders. We support people who want to be researchers and teachers, don't we? But if you wanted to be an entrepreneur in the NHS, until about 5 years ago, we did the reverse of support you. Next slide, please. So what I was tasked with 5 years ago, when some junior doctors approached me, I'd started at NHS England as the National Clinical Lead for Innovation, so a clinician who was in a leadership role for leading a whole nation's healthcare innovation. And I recall this particularly bright junior doctor who said, I've just gone and raised a seed round, and that was a couple of £1 million. And he came to see me and said, I've been told by my training program director I can be a surgeon or an entrepreneur, and I have to choose. So I've just quit. I said, what? I said, if you were in America, I said, we'd be feting you as a hero and celebrating you for doing this. And in this country, we've told you you can't do both. And I saw a real inequality there, which I didn't like. So if you wanted to be a leader or an academic or a teacher, we supported you. But if you're an entrepreneur, no, in fact, the reverse of support, we told you to go. And it didn't feel right. And you know, some of the people with those entrepreneurial ideas were some of our brightest talent. So we were losing some of the cream of the crop, some of our very best people from the NHS, because we weren't even giving them the opportunity to stay. So I was asked by Sir Bruce Keogh and Simon Stevens, my then chief exec, come on, Tony, come up with a solution for this. Having done 4 startups, having been through the academic circle and the medical leadership sort of cycle as well, we pulled together this program. Why couldn't we offer training and support to our clinicians? So the program consists of mentoring and coaching. You get a commercial coach. We've got some amazing commercial coaches on our program because they want to give their time to the National Health Service. Less than full-time training opportunities if you're in training, advanced internships in companies like Google and Apple and others people have had, but also in smaller companies too. Connections to customers and funding, that unfair advantage. You can't buy the advantage we can give you on the entrepreneur program. If you're another startup, you can't get what we can give our frontline NHS staff. Whole load of education and networking events. Just launching our test and evaluation sites, 10 of them across the NHS in England at the moment, hoping we might take this forward with Northern Ireland too. where I don't know why we've never done this before. So we're bringing it's at the moment it's Northumbria, it's Newcastle, Birmingham Women's and Children, Bradford, Milton Keynes, Mid and South Essex, East of England, Ambulance Service, Royal Free, Chelsea and Westminster, and one more, Devon and Torquay, are coming together to create a data room where your ethics and research approvals, your data sharing agreements are there, your outline business cases for approvals are there, honorary contracts, things like that, all in one place. So as a company or as an entrepreneur going to the NHS, you don't have to go through all the forms, all the processes, every single new hospital group you go to, one place, one set of forms, pre-agreed by the partners. We think that's going to be really big. And if this works, we hope to roll this out across the whole of the NHS. We do a whole lot of industry days as well, and we're building global partnerships with the Mount Sinai Group in New York, with the whole of Uganda, with hospitals in Madrid and Rome, and the whole of Australia. In fact, the Northern Irish have beaten the Australians to it, and we're hoping to launch the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme in Australia later this year, early next year. But the Northern Irish are the leaders in this, so I was so thrilled. And when Joanne came to see me about that, that was just great. Next slide, please. However, I need to be measured by some metrics, don't I? You won't see many metrics like this in the public sector, I think. These are round numbers. So this is our year 4 data. We're in year 5 now. But at the end of year 4, we had 513, mostly clinicians, but we do have managers and operational people as well now in the programme, who come through the programme. We're now over 700. Between them, they've raised £279 million, founded 246 startups. We're now at over 300 startups in year 5, I should say. Impacted over 30 million patients. But the figure I think I am most proud of all of that is 196, now way over 200 clinicians who quit working in the NHS or were on the verge of quitting, have come back to working it. And the best result we got, and I don't know what the term for this is, a GP who'd emigrated to Australia because he couldn't do his startup in the NHS, re-immigrated, is that the word? Came back into the NHS, back to Newcastle, and he's a GP working there now, doing his startup as well as delivering great clinical services. So all we need to do is create the opportunity for our amazing workforce to do what they do so well, identify the problems, then help them come up with the solutions, and that's what we do. Next slide, please. So I thought I would, rather than give you lots of in-depth case studies and things, show you some pictures of what the people on the programme are achieving. But actually, although I've got some pictures, we've got some real entrepreneurs who are going to come and talk to you shortly, and they're both from Northern Ireland, so they can tell you their story and their take on things. But this one is Hamid and Chris, 2 medical students from the Royal London Hospital, 2 medical students with a dream about drones. They wanted to create autonomous drone delivery controlled by the UK satellite network. So you could just imagine these green battery operated rechargeable drones flying across the land so that you could deliver those goods and services that you need for the NHS in a timely manner. Sounds like a pipe dream, doesn't it? Well, that's what they have when I met them about 3 years ago. Since then, they've raised £1.5 million from the European Space Agency. And you can see the NHS Rainbow Drone Squadron on the helipad at Broomfield Hospital. And we are working through with the guys here, looking at how we develop the policy for a national air grid for autonomous drone transportation across the National Health Service. Now, not to be tweeted about, please, just yet, but what you will see, I'm expecting in November, I'm hoping a minister will join us there, is the world's first drone transportation of chemotherapy. Should happen between Southampton Hospital and the Isle of Wight. At the moment, patients on the Isle of Wight have to travel to Southampton. They have to leave their loved ones, their care networks, because the chemotherapy, as you understand, degrades quite rapidly and we just can't get it there in time. So we can really address challenges like that will make a real impact on patient lives. Next slide. I could talk about drones all day, it's so exciting, but this one is just as good. Timber Health, the smartphone otoscope. So we beat the Americans. They raised tens of millions for CellScope, but they couldn't get it right. little ENT surgeon who quit the NHS, came back under the entrepreneur program as a GP, developed the smartphone otoscope. Now you can see his little production line there in the middle, and here is a healthcare assistant on the far side using this tool to remove earwax in a Boots hearing centre. Over 100,000 patients in our country have now had their earwax removed. Instead of having to go to a hospital for an ENT surgeon and an operating microscope to do it, it's been disrupted down to the community, being done in care homes, nursing homes, and in this case, in Boots hearing centres. Wow. Next slide, please. And this is the last picture I've got of one of our amazing entrepreneurs. This is what a great lab is this. Wouldn't you like this for your scientific lab? The Formula One hangar in Milton Keynes for Red Bull. So this is young Alistair Darwood, one of our entrepreneurs, who, when the ventilator challenge happened, you may recall that 18 months ago, last March, I got a call from a colleague at NHS England saying, Tony, have you heard we're about to run out of ventilators? What are we going to do? Have you got anyone on your entrepreneur program? And you know, we had designed a program that supported our frontline NHS staff to help them identify problems, come up with a solution, and then give them the commercial skills, knowledge, and experience to start building a scalable commercial solution. And out of the 700 people we had on the program, one of them was developing a low-cost portable ventilator. I got him to pitch in front of the Cabinet Office within a week, and he had £10 million injected into that program. He basically lived in that Formula One hangar for about 4 weeks, and we had ready to go 5,000 ventilators to come off the production line that weekend when the numbers changed. And we realized we were never, thank goodness, going to get to the peak of ventilated cases we thought. So they never actually got made. But we had a plan, and we had a plan not because of Dyson, who was great, or Rolls-Royce, or anyone else, because of a little orthopedic surgeon from Imperial College London on the Clinical Entrepreneur Program. Just see what you can do when you empower our most important asset, your frontline staff. Next slide, please. So we're nearly there. I think this is such an exciting time. It's as big as the printing press. 500 years ago, handwritten books given to rulers and kings. The printing press disrupted that and put education in the hands of our population. Wow. Well, whether it's smartphone technology, other advanced technology, robotics, neural networks, machine learning, social networks, 5G, the whole personalized medicine scene, you know, they're coming together, aren't they? You know, I used to be really sad that I hadn't been born in Victorian times when they discovered anesthetics, or in Edwardian times when, you know, we discovered X-rays. Because I've missed all the great bits in history, or when antibiotics were discovered. But actually now is a super exciting time. And I can see all this technology starting to come together now to help us do some quite remarkable things. Next slide. And it sounds great, but that's all for nothing if we forget this quote from Maya Angelou, one of my favorite authors. I've learned that people will forget what you said and people forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. How can we utilize this great technology, these great advances, to actually give us the time to care, the time for compassion? That is what our patients want most from us, isn't it? How we can make that human connection again. And that's what we have to do. And that's why the front line of the NHS are the most important in making this happen, because they know that. Now, I didn't want to leave you, although I do have two amazing entrepreneurs from Northern Ireland. I wanted to show you what are my prediction for the greatest innovation in healthcare for the future, probably ever, but certainly for many decades to come. It's a big claim. Last slide. So this is the most important innovation in healthcare, in my view. This is year 3 of the Clinical Entrepreneur Program, our frontline workforce. Most industries would mine the intellectual capital of their workforce for their brightest ideas and then help them take them forward. And now the National Health Service is doing that. Look at that audience, right in the bottom of the stairs in the middle there. I can see Colin Melville, the Medical Director of the General Medical Council. Up on the far left of my screen in the little blue jacket on the top there, Professor Dame Sue Hill, our Chief Scientific Officer in England, here supporting our diverse group of entrepreneurs, dentists, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, allied health practitioners, clinical scientists, everyone, and now managers and others in the NHS stepping forward, rolling up their sleeves to help us address the grand challenges in healthcare. So, Joan, at that point, I'll finish and hand back to you.
Thanks, Tony. So excited about all of the possibilities, because I think you've only just scratched the surface. You've really just kind of, got going with this. So, and just to hear about the agility with which, you could develop those ventilators, even if they didn't get to production. You think about pandemic readiness, or how we're going to be ready for the next thing. So really, really excited. So thank you very much, Tony, and you're going to stay for the panel as well. So if there are questions for Tony, difficult ones and easy ones as well, please do put them into the chat. And
I love the way you said difficult ones first, Joanne. That was fine.
Well, I'm sure you can answer very difficult ones. So fantastic, brilliant. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, please. And this is to introduce Professor Ian Young, who's Chief Scientific Advisor for the Department of Health of Northern Ireland. He's also Professor of Medicine at Queen's University Belfast, and Deputy Medical Director and Consultant Chemical Pathologist at the Belfast Health and Social Care Trust, and also Director of Research for Health and Social Care Northern Ireland. So I'm really delighted that Ian is here to talk to you about research and innovation in health and social care, and hopefully present some innovative case studies as well that we can build on as we join the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. Thanks, Professor Young, over to you.
Thank you very much, Joanne, for the welcome. And you've got two Professor Youngs in a row, completely unrelated. What are the odds of that, I wonder? But it's a pleasure to be here this evening, and I greatly welcome our collaboration with England and the launch and availability of the Clinical Entrepreneurs Programme to the Northern Ireland community. Next slide, please. Just to remind everyone, if you're not aware, that research is a core function of health and social care in Northern Ireland, and is embedded as a core function, hopefully, in all that we do. It addresses specific patient population needs, facilitates early access to cutting-edge treatments, attracts, develops and retains the best staff, and directly and indirectly benefits the economy. Next slide, please. All of that is outlined in our strategy, Research for Better Health and Social Care, which we're currently around halfway through, and helping to promote innovation and entrepreneurship is one of the strands which is embedded within that strategy. Next slide. To help support research, we have an infrastructure which includes significant core investment in Cancer Trials Network and Clinical Research Network, in a clinical trials unit, a research methodology hub, and clinical research facility. All of that is available to everyone, but in addition, we have support for innovation and entrepreneurship, to which I'll return later as I speak. Next slide, please. Innovation occurs naturally in health and social care, and we have many examples of that. Novel treatments, new diagnostics, new and improved devices, new drugs or new uses for existing drugs, new and improved services, and increasingly use of data through apps or other mechanisms to improve health and social care. Often it just takes place, but is maybe not developed and rolled out as fully as it could be. And the Entrepreneur Programme is to help to facilitate and build on some of the innovation which we know our staff are so good at. Next slide. Innovation emerges from right across the full range of health and social care staff. It's not something which is by any means restricted to medical and dental staff. And we have examples of innovation coming from nurses and midwives, from professional and technical staff, from social services, and from other areas of our workforce. So this is something which is available to and relevant to everyone who's working in health and social care. Next slide. I'll give you a few examples, and there are many which I could give you of the type of innovation which has emerged and has been successful within Northern Ireland. First of all, a couple of innovations which have come out of our healthcare science and clinical communities, and working at the interface of diagnostic tests and medicine. Young children can present with suspected meningococcal disease, and getting a rapid diagnosis early is critically important. Traditional culture methods to confirm a diagnosis of meningococcal disease can take up to 72 hours, and staff in the labs working with clinicians in the Children's Hospital helped to develop a greatly improved and much more rapid technique. Next slide, please. The unmet clinical need which they identified was for accurate diagnosis of meningococcal disease with rapid results using non-invasive samples, and the solution they came up with and validated and published showed both 100% sensitivity and specificity and produced results in less than 20 minutes in order to provide a definitive basis for treatment. Testing is now possible both with blood or CSF samples, but also with non-invasive samples, and it allows patients who test positive to be treated early and effectively with appropriate antibiotics. The LAMP technology and the test was subsequently licensed out to Hybergene Diagnostics, a new diagnostic company who are now marketing it in over 70 countries worldwide through their distribution program. Next slide, please. The group has gone on to innovate further and to look at other clinical areas where the same approach could be piloted. Next slide, please. During birth, there's a risk of infection to the neonate with group B streptococcus, a very dangerous infection which can result in serious outcomes for a baby and can be prevented by treatment of the mother during the labour period. Again, the traditional method to confirm the diagnosis took up to 72 hours, and the rapid test which they developed can give a definitive result in less than 60 minutes, a transformative change in terms of managing this risk. It's possible now to do rapid testing for group B strep during labour and to initiate treatment based on an accurate diagnosis rather than a best guess. And again, it's been licensed out to Hybergene Diagnostics, a company with bases in Ireland, and marketed now in many countries across the world. Next slide. And next slide. Now, not all innovation is based on such relatively hard scientific developments. There's much innovation which is based on what are often seen as more mundane problems, but nonetheless are important. And again, the key is relevant staff working in the area, identifying a problem, an unmet need, and then developing and rolling out a solution to that. Colleagues in the Northern Trust identified a challenge for patients living with peripherally inserted central lines required for delivering therapies or nutrition, and sought to introduce new clinical procedure packs which would help to ensure safe and effective practice and provide consistent information and treatment for patients. Next slide, please. Over 500 packs have been distributed and used by district nursing teams throughout the Northern Trust area on over 80 individuals with PICC lines. And this resulted in a reduction in hospital admissions of almost 90% for those patients where admission requiring replacement of a line or as a result of infection was a common clinical challenge. The project was derived and focused based on community nursing, but is also being transferred to many other clinical areas, and is an example of an innovation which has greatly improved patient outcomes. Next slide. And finally, pharmacy colleagues, again working in the Northern Trust area, identified an issue with errors in terms of medicines reconciliation when patients move between home and hospital. Despite best efforts, occasionally mistakes were made which resulted in delayed treatment or inappropriate treatment to patients when they left hospital. And through developing an electronic solution, RightMed, a medicines reconciliation software, they have developed a system which has greatly reduced those sorts of prescribing errors and has now been commercialised and rolled out throughout Northern Ireland through Yara software. Next slide. There are many other examples, including of devices in the area of orthopedics, of other software-based and app-based solutions in social work and in the emergency department, which have been brought forward by entrepreneurs. But there have also been challenges, I think, to individuals in terms of developing and promoting their ideas, and the barriers that exist or are perceived to exist have undoubtedly resulted in some innovative ideas and thinking being lost, and a small number of individuals, as Tony indicated, leaving our system for reasons that they felt were related to lack of support or opportunity. I hope that we'll be able to address many of those challenges through this programme. At the moment, we have HSC Innovations as the Northern Ireland organisation which helps to provide advice to entrepreneurs and staff around management of intellectual property and its subsequent commercialisation. And they have been involved in supporting many of the examples that I've outlined today. They're keen to help staff make the right connections, both with potential funders and with industry and academic partners, to help to develop new and improved products and services. Next slide. HSC Innovations can assist in every way with the process of developing ideas into products or services to enable health and social care organisations to deliver improvements in healthcare. Next slide, please. And just click through this for me. If we're going to embed innovation at the centre of our activities, if we want to ensure that every opportunity to derive benefit for service users can be maximised, as is embedded in our innovation policy, then it's important that we identify innovations deriving from HSC R&D and clinical activities, that we protect, manage and develop the intellectual property in the interests of patients and society as a whole, that we ensure that income generated can come back to those who developed the idea. And I hope that all of that will be promoted through this clinical entrepreneurship programme and also through the ongoing involvement of HSC Innovations with our staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Young. That was fantastic. It was really lovely to see the diversity of innovations as well. The fact that there were diagnostics, so obviously sort of clinical scientists, as well as nursing treatments and prescribing have come through there. So I think that really belies the talents that lie across the whole of the workforce. So, you know, I'm really pleased to see that. So thank you very much for giving your insights there. I am delighted on the next slide to introduce the next clinical entrepreneurs. So, but we have Bernadette Porter who's going to speak, but first up we've got Dr. Scott Martin, who's CEO and co-founder of Recourse AI. He's a current clinical entrepreneur fellow. and is particularly interested in natural language processing for healthcare consultations. So over to you, Scott, to tell us more about your entrepreneurial journey and all things good and bad, I guess, about the programme, what you learned. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joanne. Yeah, so my name's Scott Martin. Really delighted to be able to tell you a little bit about my story this evening. So yeah, I'm originally from Banbridge in County Down. I'm a medical doctor by training, and I'm one of the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Fellows. As Joanne mentioned, I'm co-founder and CEO at a company called Recourse AI as well, where we're on a mission to accelerate learning curves, reduce medical errors, and improve patient outcomes, really by leveraging conversational AI. We can go on to that a little bit more in a moment. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start off just by taking you back to my final year of medical school when I was about to sit my exams, where I would be graded by a senior clinician as they observed me interacting with a patient. Every day leading up to this, I was trying to learn by practicing on real patients in the high-risk, high-pressured clinical environment of a hospital. But of course, I couldn't be there all the time, get the feedback that I needed, or see every diagnosis or demographic of patient that I needed to be familiar with. Next slide, please. So because of this, my friends and I, we would act out scenarios. Maybe people listening to this call have done the same thing. One of us would play the role of a patient, the other would attempt to reach that diagnosis. Sorry for the image there. But it was one day that I remember, I think I was playing the role of maybe a 66-year-old with abdominal pain or something like that. And I was just thinking, you know, there must be a better way for us to train clinicians who are going to be out there on the front line making life or death decisions. Next slide, please. So as I dug deeper, I began to understand the implications of an approach to medical training that isn't scalable. Unfortunately, after heart disease and cancer, medical error is the third leading cause of death, and this is in the Western world actually as well. In addition, most people will actually experience at least one diagnostic error in their lifetime, and 1 in 10 patients admitted to UK hospitals unfortunately suffer harm in some way. Next slide, please. Indeed, you know, NHS vacancies are rising and have been for some time. And it was clear that we needed a way to train more quality clinicians in less time in order to accelerate workforce capacity by leveraging exponential technologies. Next slide, please. And at that time, I believed the answer lay in conversational AI, which might instantly get you thinking about Star Wars, you know, Iron Man, Black Mirror, which, you know, isn't far off the truth. Next slide, please. But what was once fiction, we're now seeing, you know, it's being played out in reality right now in our daily lives, whether it be through Amazon Alexa or, you know, another smartphone app. With the exponential growth of machine intelligence, capable of understanding human questions and providing accurate and useful speech-based responses. So what if doctors and nurses could leverage this technology to train anytime, anywhere with digital AI human patients and be exposed to any medical condition or patient demographic and receive instant AI generated feedback on performance? Next slide, please. So I thought this sounded like a good idea. So for the next 6 months, while still at university, nearly every night I was in the library, didn't tell anyone, working on the first version of a flight simulator for healthcare, teaching myself basic programming skills. Luckily, soon after starting my journey to build my prototype, I persuaded a guy called Maxim Belousov to join me as a technical co-founder who had a PhD in machine learning and natural language processing. Next slide, please. So from there, armed with our MVP, or minimum viable product, we went and won our university startup competition up to £10,000. From there, that gave us the confidence to go and apply and secure a place on the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. So, we were really fortunate from then to raise our first round of funding, £150,000 from an angel investor. And fast forward to today, we've raised almost £1 million in funding for our award-winning operating system for clinical performance, supported by Innovate UK, SBRI, the Ministry of Defence, and we're now turning over 6 figures in revenue. With customers that we're supporting, including the NHS, global pharma, and top US universities. And we were really proud during the pandemic to enable clinical learning to continue during what was a tough time for healthcare and healthcare training. Recently, we're really excited to have shown in peer-reviewed research that our platform actually improves clinical performance. Next slide, please. So, if you had told me maybe 2-3 years ago, if you had shown me that slide 2-3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But really, a lot of it is down to programs, like this one. So why should you join, if you're watching this now? Well, I believe that the program equips clinician innovators with an unfair advantage, as Tony alluded to, across 4 main areas, and I've experienced this firsthand. The first I'm going to call Just Do It. Not sponsored by Nike in any way. I couldn't think of a better name for it, really. But listen, getting started, that's the hardest part. But when you're surrounded by people who are no different to you, who are themselves just doing it, and you're watching them, for example, on the program, you can leverage this energy and you can use it as momentum to take your first steps as well. For most, this first step might be an MVP or minimum viable product, which is really, how quick can you make something to show people, even if it doesn't work or have the full range of features. It really makes a world of difference in conveying your idea. So I would strongly advise anyone listening to take steps in that direction. At the start, you can do things that don't necessarily scale. For example, Stripe, now the leading online payments processor, in the early days, they actually went around knocking on the doors of offices and installing manually their software on everyone's computer. And now they're one of the most valuable companies, on the planet, with well over 100, with almost 100 billion now. And financial services and that sort of highly regulated area isn't too difficult to healthcare. So, we can do things to just get some momentum and get going. So in terms of feedback, the program, it's a very unique, it gives access to a very unique group of individuals who are essentially your target customers if you're innovating in healthcare. This gives you a real chance to seek out feedback and also negative feedback, which is really important, on your idea and from those close to your space. This allows you to rapidly iterate and reach product market fit quicker and really increase your chances of success. In terms of team, for me, this is the most important part. In particular, finding a co-founder, for example, if you are clinical and not technical, I think one of the first things you should do is consider this. Find someone who can help you build the product. Similarly, if you're technical, find someone who can sell and raise funds. I mean, this is so important that one of the biggest accelerator programs, Y Combinator, although the Clinical Entrepreneur Program, I feel, is giving Y Combinator a run for their money at the moment, they actually rarely accept applications from solo founders, Y Combinator. So I think it's something to really think about. Indeed, the program gives access to a highly talented pool of potential co-founders, advisors, and mentors who can provide really valuable introductions as well to customers and sources of funding. The last point is sell. You need to learn how to sell. I would say not all of us, but most of us probably quite bad at it. It doesn't feel very comfortable. I certainly experienced that. But selling your vision to get that superstar co-founder to come and join you, to get buy-in from your department, to start that transformational quality improvement project, to get any investment or customer to believe in you, you need to be able to sell and put forward your idea. For me, the key was to build confidence by having conversations with people like fellow clinical entrepreneurs. You can listen and learn from them pitching their ideas. And if you're passionate about what you're doing, more often than not, this will just come naturally after a short period of time. Next slide, please. So really, there's never been a better time to innovate, either within the system or to spin out a startup company. There's more capital around than ever before for early stage businesses at the seed funding level. And in Northern Ireland especially, I believe that we've got such a rich talent pool to rival even the biggest of tech hubs. If you're considering applying to join the great team that is the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, strongly advise you to go ahead and just do it. So yeah, thanks a lot for listening and for the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions that we don't get to answer this evening. I'm at scott@recourseai.com. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Scott. Really great to hear your energy and also hearing your sort of nuggets of advice about the feedback and really pulling through from that motivation from that whole group of entrepreneurs. In each cohort, how many people are there? I was just trying to think. Is there sort of 40 people or?
Could be a question for Tony, actually. I think in my cohort, I think there was close to 100 at that point. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll ask. I was just interested to see kind of what size of class that is, and then multiplying that up by advisors and mentors. But anyway, I'll leave those for the panel session. But it's just something that occurred to me at the time. So thank you very much. I'm going to move on now to introduce Bernadette Porter. And she is the clinical lead and founder at NeuroResponse. I think she'll probably correct Tony. She's not from Northern Ireland. She's from Donegal, but only just over the way. So really delighted to welcome you, Bernadette. And Bernadette is alumni of the Innovation Accelerator Programme and a current fellow. As I said, founder of NeuroResponse, but has worked in neurology for over 25 years and is still an honorary consultant nurse in multiple sclerosis at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery at UCLH and the Royal Free. So really pleased that you could join us today, Bernadette, and looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you very much, Joanne, for the invite. Yes, so I'm a consultant nurse, and I'm really happy to tell you about my journey. I founded NeuroResponse, which is a social enterprise, and our aim is to combine technology and humanity to improve and deliver personalised care for people living with long-term neuro conditions like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and dementia. Next slide, please. So this evening, I'm going to talk to you a bit about our journey and a bit about just the context of NeuroResponse as a new model of care, life before and after joining the programme, the key benefits of the programme, and where I might be if it wasn't actually for the Clinical Entrepreneurship Programme, and some reflections. Next slide, please. Like many entrepreneurial innovations and journeys, this started with a problem that needed to be fixed, and it was very much based within our clinical practice. So as a consultant nurse, one of my roles in London was to look at standardizing care across our region, and I was doing that across our academic health science network. And one question we had was asking, what are the why do people with MS turn up in emergency departments and have unplanned admissions? What's the symptoms? What are the problems? We asked that question, and we found an answer that identified a problem that was really off the radar of a lot of the specialist neurology teams, and that's what we then, using that audit data, we then try to talk with patients and find out about why things were happening, why they ended up in A&E, and then also what could be done to fix it. If we were going to fix it, what would a good care pathway look like? And then we created this care pathway together, tested it, and I've been doing that and involving it over time while I've been on the program. So next slide, please. So as I said, the question we asked was, what are the reasons people turn up in A&E and or have unplanned admissions? And you can see there at the bottom, urinary tract infection was the biggest problem for our patient group. And this wasn't just an issue for our region, because when we took our audit data back to colleagues in NHS England and they looked at this, this was a problem right across the NHS. And in the NHS England alone, 42 million is spent in 1 year managing people with MS, with urinary tract infections, ending up coming into A&E and then having unplanned admissions. And so we were thinking, really, we don't understand. Of course, we all know that, you know, people with MS have potential to have, you know, urinary infections and neurogenic bladder problems. But what we didn't seem to know is that we had all these silo super specialist services across the region, and unknowns to us, you know, at midnight on a Friday, our patients were turning up in the local A&Es and being admitted, and the systems, nobody communicated this to across the different pathways. So we used co-design and went out and interviewed patients and asked them and said, how did you end up in, you know, UCLH A&E at midnight last Saturday? And they told us stories that, you know, that when they thought they had a urinary tract infection, something was brewing, you know, they couldn't get into their GP. That they often, when they even got into their GP, they didn't have their samples sent to the lab. There's somebody might be a dipstick, but they were given a generic antibiotic. And even if they said to the patient, to the GP, actually, I'm resistant to that antibiotic, they were given that antibiotic anyway. And of course, meanwhile, you know, their UTIs are getting worse, their MS is getting worse, they would get difficulty moving, and you know, they're falling, and lots of a cascade events, and then they end up in A&E, and they turn up in A&E, and when they turned up in A&E, they were admitted. So they told us about all this fragmented care. So again, using our co-design methodology, we brought everyone that was involved in that pathway together into a big room, and we had, you know, the GP staff, the receptionists, we had commissioners, we had microbiologists, we had the lab technicians, we had absolutely everyone there, and of course patients with MS and their family. And we said, look, if we know we've got this big problem, but let's see if we could actually design something that would be better, and tell us what that would look like. Next slide, please. So our patients said to us, well, you know what would be brilliant? It would be brilliant if we had access to advice 24/7, because you know these UTIs are pretty random. It would be good if we had some sort of electronic anticipatory care plan, perhaps being able to be more empowered to screen our urines ourselves. They said that often getting a sample to the lab was really tricky, and they often had to wait for days, sometimes 5 days, to get a result. They said it would be brilliant if they actually could have their samples, get them ready at home, and somebody came and collected them. It would be great if the systems across the pathway talked to each other, and if, of course, everything was kept in some secure way. So this was the output from the co-design with our patients and families and all the clinicians and stakeholders in the room. So our job then was to think about, well, what's out there already? You know, what do we, you know, what can we bolt into, and what do we need to develop? And this is what we did. Next slide, please. So we already know that, of course, we had, you know, 24/7 access with 111, but we also know that 111 didn't have any specialized care plans or anticipatory care plans for this type of patient groups. So what we did is we, in our portal, we created an anticipatory care plan, which then could be linked personally to that person onto their mobile, to their landline, that directs them in. When they call 111, it brings them in, and 111 can see that, yes, you've got a neuroresponse care plan, I see you've got MS, and I believe you now think you've got a urinary tract infection. So very, very bespoke assessment and triage. when the individual patient sign up for the care pathway, they're also given QR labeled urine specimen pods at home. And so they went on the triage with 111, they would say, have you got your sample ready? They say yes. Our lab partner has a courier system, and so the 111 person would say, well, we'll now dispatch a bike to you, to your home. They'll be there in the next hour to pick up your sample. We'll bring it through into our lab and basically fast track microbiology, and we'll be able to find out if you have a urinary tract infection and what bespoke antibiotic you need. Next slide, please. And so behind the scenes to deliver this care pathway is, you know, a group of 111 GPs that we upskilled, and they are able to see the results coming through, and they're able to accurately triage and guide patients, prescribe electronically as needed, and follow people up on day 3. Are you better? Are you not? Do we need to triage you again? So that would be our minimal viable product, this electronic care pathway that we created. And we know that this works, and that we started off the proof of concept with 5 very complex patients, moved up to 50, up to 500. So across the region, building up the evidence base to show that if you have this anticipatory care plan, that you can actually be treated at home without ever going near either your GP or definitely A&E. So we've got that evidence base. The next slide, please. And this relates to where I was before joining the clinical entrepreneurship program. And I would say I was in here at 3 at startups. So we had already done, you know, we already worked out that there was a problem. We had already designed a potential solution with the patients, and we had it validated with our proof of concept. And then we were in the startup stage of trying to model up and to get more evidence around what we were doing. Next slide, please. And then thinking about what have I done since I joined the clinical entrepreneurship program. So all of you are there as clinicians, and you're thinking, oh, is this for me? Is this not for me? Well, I'm going to say to you, yes, it is. And you're going to learn so much. One of the first things I had to learn from the master himself, Professor Tony Young, we learned to pitch. The other thing I had to learn was to unlock the startup mindset. And that was about, you know, opening self up for growth, you know, as Scott just said, that just do it, you know, just having that courage and making those things, just doing things. And when I think of my personal growth, when I think of the COVID first wave, you know, we had already created our platform as I described, but in the first wave of COVID, we had a problem in MS in that our patients who we normally would bring in to have bloods monitored, the doors closed. Suddenly there's no outpatients, no one's doing your bloods. You just have to sort of, just fingers crossed and hope you're not going to, you know, develop any problems on these disease modifying drugs. Well, what we were able to do, just having that startup mindset, I was thinking, well, we've got a platform, we can just create new pathways. We'll put blood monitoring pathways up there. We've already got the network with the doctor's laboratory. I was able to find phlebotomists that were redundant, that were looking for work to do, that normally had looked after people. They were doing monitoring for the Olympics. So we were able to use a combination of, you know, people that were in the system and switch on blood monitoring pathways to create a new safety net for our patients. And again, that was because I'd been challenged to unlock and think in a bit more of a startup way. Other things I've done that I've never thought I'd be doing as a clinician, you know, so have protected intellectual property, filed for trademarks, commissioned, and you know, we did the, you know, proof of concept, the pilot test, and now we're actually commissioned. People, the commissioners pay for people living in North Central London to have this pathway. I've received investment from NHSX for digital improvement and more integration, and I applied for the SBRI funding, which in phase 1, which was successful, and that again was a stepping stone into a whole new world and another place to take our thinking and what we're doing to the next level. So next slide, please. So on the SBRI and on this, which is all facilitated by being on the clinical entrepreneurship program, we've now co-designed these digital pathways so that they'd be suitable for people with Parkinson's and dementia. And we have designed and validated an app prototype with patients and clinicians from these 3 diseases now. We've done a meta-analysis to be able to show to NICE that there's health economic value of this type of working. We've linked to new partners. Regionally, we've got, you know, our integrated care system, the Bladder Board has approved for us to scale that. And then recently just registered the trademark for the Neuro app. Next slide, please. And so we now have a situation that we basically have NeuroResponse in your pocket and a prototype app that we, with future funding, will be building and growing and be able to take that to the next stage and obviously scale out to more and more people and improve care. Next slide, please. I would feel that the key benefits of being on this program has been the badge of approval, you know, being able to say, you know, I am on the clinical entrepreneurship program. It really does, you know, get people to sit up and listen and take you seriously. And that's difficult because, you know, as clinical entrepreneurs, we're often seen as sort of mavericks and we bit, you know, a bit troublemakers. So it's actually really good to have this badge of approval. It's a great place to show the importance of co-design. There's fantastic mentors and really, really good workshops, some amazing, inspiring people. It links you across into the NHS innovation system and you grow. I've learned so many new skills. The other thing I've put here when I was thinking about this is kindness, because even though it's a really competitive world and some of the brightest people I've ever met in my life in those arenas, people are really kind and generous, and I think that's priceless. Not only did I grow, but my colleagues grew, and you know, I could look at the program and then email in and say, oh, you know, someone in my team would love to come to that. Can they come too? Yeah. So everyone, you know, it's that lovely feeling of growing together. And as I said, being there with other Maverick clinicians so that you're actually, you know, you actually feel okay. You're not the sort of strange one so much anymore. There's a great energy there and there's a great focus. And it's a place to really get your thinking in order in a safe space. But, you know, it's not a safe, you know, oh, you know, willy socks huggy place. It's safe, it's psychologically safe, but you know what they say, the hard truth about good innovative cultures are places that are psychologically safe but brutally candid. And I would say, yeah, you know, you need to be adult and just, you know, take, as Scott said, you know, take the negative as well in order to grow. Next slide, please. So where would I say we are now? I'm up further up now up the scale. We're at 4 in the scale up stage, looking at with our prototypes, developing things further, and really building on the commercial element to get in there to be a market player. So definitely have come up along that innovation journey by being part of this program. And then my last slide, I think, please. So if not here, where? Well, I would have left the NHS, I would think, by now. And probably what I would have been doing is contributing to the literature of, you know, the barriers to innovation and how we didn't actually get it to work or get it there. So that's probably where I'd be if I hadn't been on that program at this stage in my career. And then my final slide is just a few reflections. You know, if I was to say to you as a clinician, have you ever been involved with problem solving, problem prevention, continuous improvement, designing for the future? You would say, yeah, of course I have. But if I was to say to you, oh, as a clinician, are you an innovator? You might go, oh, I don't know. I'm a nurse. But actually, those 4 key concepts of problem solving, prevention, continuous improvement, and new future, they're actually 4 distinct elements of innovation. So you probably know more than you give yourself credit for. I also think, you know, as a clinician, the proof of concept, that pilot sort of world, is a bit of a comfort zone. And I could have sat there for far too long without people like Tony pushing and saying, well, you know, is there customers here? Is somebody going to buy it? So, you know, getting that commissioners in and buying this is really important. There's something also as well as clinicians that, especially if we've been involved a lot in a lot of academic type environments where, you know, we keep building on that academic rigor, but maybe, you know, in too solid a way, we don't have the agility of the startup mindset. So it's somewhere about balancing both of those. And the other thing is to think, just to say to yourself, you know, you don't need to know it all. I don't know it all. I only know the clinical elements and the co-design elements of my business. I've had to learn things. I've had to learn a lot of things. But, you know, if you approach it and say, yeah, I know I can learn, and I also know I can get help. Well, that's something, you know, if you can say to yourself, I can learn and I can get help, then this program's for you. And then experience starts when you take the first step. So don't procrastinate. All I say is apply and see where your journey takes you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernadette. It was lovely to see your energy, and I can really see how your confidence grew, I think, through that. And what is fantastic to see as well is how the neuro response is building that resilience into the system. So, oh, we'll just add another pathway, we'll add another pathway. And I think that really shows, you know, the agility. So thank you for sharing that, and hopefully we can probe you more in the panel. Fantastic, really lovely stories. And I just got our final speaker here, who is Gary McCausland, who's a entrepreneurship, he works in entrepreneurship at Invest Northern Ireland, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the onward pathway tools and support that are available in Northern Ireland, potentially beyond the clinical entrepreneurship programme. So over to you, Gary.
Hello everyone, I'm Gary McCausland from Invest Northern Ireland's entrepreneurship team, and I'm delighted to be talking to you today about this exciting new initiative that we're launching in partnership with the NHS Clinical Entrepreneurship Team from Anglia Ruskin University with Harani and HSC here in Northern Ireland. Firstly, you may already know a bit about InvestNI. We are the main economic development organisation in Northern Ireland, and you've probably noticed our successes in promoting inward investment and supporting local companies to grow. But another core focus is the promotion of entrepreneurship, encouraging and supporting people like you to start their own businesses. The life and health sciences sector is a key priority for InvestNI as we emerge from COVID restrictions. You will also see it featuring as a key cluster in the Department for the Economy's 10X economic vision for Northern Ireland. And we are also working closely with other organisations to deliver the new City and Growth deals, which include a significant investment in life and health sciences, new infrastructure, centres of excellence to support collaboration between industry, academia and health services to enhance capability in areas such as medical devices, clinical trials and data analytics. So how can InvestNI help you in the run-up to, during and after the Clinical Entrepreneurship Programme? Probably the most time-sensitive thing to mention is our help with your recorded pitches. We've adapted our very successful pitch optimization program into a workshop specifically for clinical entrepreneurship, particularly to help you develop application pitches. This workshop will take place on the 11th of October at 6 p.m. We will email the registration details after this webinar. For those who get accepted onto the program, InvestNI will be alongside you right the way through the process. One of the first things I'd like to point you towards is the My New Business section of our NI Business Info website. It's a great source of information and provides you with all you need in terms of getting your businesses established. The program is absolutely fantastic, and the Invest in I team will work with you as the program evolves to help with product definition, developing your business model. Don't worry about the jargon, it will all become clear as the program unfolds, linking you into local sources of help and guidance, advice on intellectual property, sources of funding, and so on. To close, I'd just like to highlight some key dates for your diaries. As I said, the pitch optimization workshop is on Monday, 11th of October at 6 p.m. And some other important dates to note for your diaries. We've got 5 dates for applicant Q&As. Wednesday, 13th of October, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Friday, 15th of October, 1 to 2 p.m. Thursday, the 21st of October, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Friday, the 22nd of October, 1 to 2 p.m. and Monday, the 25th of October, 1 to 2 p.m. That's all from me. I just want to close by saying a huge thanks for your time today and to say we're really excited to be partnering with the CEP in this exciting new initiative.
Thanks, Gary. It's great to see that there's some additional support there and the runway for entrepreneurs to connect to additional mentors and that whole community around in Northern Ireland as well, in addition to the Clinical Entrepreneurs Programme. So fantastic. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today.
Thank you.
I think we now have, thanks Gary. We have a panel session now. And Gary, I think, is also going to join the panel too. But apologies, Gary. I could have fitted you on my slide, but didn't have you there. And really, just to talk through some of the things that I think people are itching to hear about. So, I mean, I think first of all, I'd like to ask Professor Tony Young. Really, obviously, we've heard a lot about the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, but it'd be really great to hear. I know you're launching next week, and there's a huge amount of resources to go and look at about making an application. But can you just describe the process just briefly to us? I have got a slide as well later on if people are interested, but I think it would be great if you could just describe that to us, really, what the next steps are if people do want to apply.
Sure, absolutely, Joanne. So first of all, the applications are opening on, I think it's the 5th of October. And if you just Google NHS Clinical Entrepreneur, you'll find it. But Joanne, I'm sure, will be sending the link out and publishing that on their website and promoting it. We will all be promoting it. And I'd just encourage people to apply. Do you know, you don't have to have the next SpaceX or PayPal or whatever it is. You can just be someone who wants to change and transform patient care and use that commercial skill, knowledge, and experience. You know, I'm not saying Bernadette's not Elon Musk and Scott is Elon Musk, but what I'm saying is there's a complete range of different things that go on there. And you know what the great thing about them is? They've known me so long, they laugh at my jokes now, and not even my children laugh at my jokes now. So look, the program itself and the application process is quite straightforward. What we want to hear about is you. We do ask you to use an example of an innovation or something you've done to take forward, and it doesn't have to be a startup. It could be something in quality improvement, something you've done that's new and original, and it gives us an idea of the sort of person you are. The thing we have, which I think is relatively, well, I mean, you can't be relatively unique, you're either unique or you're not, aren't you? But okay, which is unique, is we have a 1-minute elevator video pitch as part of your application. Please don't try and do anything really fancy and high-tech. Record it on your smartphone and submit it. Now, people get a bit anxious about that because we don't give you too many guidelines on what to do. And I've had people sing their application. I've had a poem written about how great their startup is. I've had someone stand in an elevator, push the button and go, this is my 60-second pitch in an elevator. It doesn't actually matter what you do, as long as what comes across to us is who you are, why you are passionate and committed and driven. The more personal it is, the more open you are on why you want to do this and transform it. Now, I could have lined up Bernadette's and Scott's 1-minute elevator pitches that they submitted a few years. Did you see the look on Bernadette's face? But I didn't ask them beforehand, so I wouldn't do that to them. But do you know, last year we had, I think, over 700 applications, and I viewed every single video, and I love it. It's a bit like the X Factor, because there are some wonderful ones and there are some people who pitch and you just go, you need some practice in your bit. So pitching tells us so much about you, and it's wonderful. So embrace it, and it really. And you know, the proof is, I think, that we've grown year on year on year. About 100 in year one. Slowly, it's grown up. We appointed 193 to the program last year. I get given very little money at NHS England. It's all done through word of mouth, really, and through the social media advertising we do. But we might get to 1,000 people from the NHS on the programme by this time as the new cohort come in, which is just incredible. 1,000 agents for change who are innovation ready within our healthcare system. It's quite incredible. So it's a straightforward form. The video pitch is the thing people get a little upset about, but we are hosting a series of webinars through October, some of them in the day, some of them in the evening, so you'll see my mugshot a bit more, I'm afraid, and just going through the process and answering any specific questions people have when their applications get live. Is that an answer for you, Joanne?
That's fantastic. Thank you, Tony. And we'll obviously share that. There's a website we can share afterwards, but also the links through, and again, through the Harani mouthpiece and the Invest-NI mouthpiece, we'll share that as well too. I've actually had a question come in, which I think I will address to Tony, which is, do you have to be a permanent employee, and what about fixed term roles? And I was just wondering, my impression is it's open to all, but please advise.
So yeah, it's anyone who is providing NHS services. So you don't have to be a full-time employee, although you can be. You could be a locum. You can in fact not be employed by the NHS at all, but delivering services like GPs in our country are. We don't employ GPs. Centrally, they are self-employed ultimately, but we have about a third of the programme comes from general practice. So as long as you are delivering services for the NHS in what you're doing, then, and you know, it was all meant to be people based in England, but have I allowed some people from Scotland to sneak onto the programme? Much to the, you mustn't say, oh, should I say this, should I not? Do you know, I had an I'm going to say it, so I'm going to trust the confidence of the audience. I had a clinician ring me from Scotland and saying, I've been told by my training program director, if I apply for your program, they'll throw me off training. I said, I tell you what, apply, and if you don't tell them, I won't tell them. So don't say I said that. And they're still on the, what is it? That people who want to upskill themselves in their knowledge with commercial knowledge and skills to try and improve patient care, and someone in the system says you can't do that. Well, I tell you what, I'm on your side. The NHS is on your side. We want to help, you know, upskill our workforce. So, Jack, wouldn't it be amazing if you just didn't? I'm a surgeon, okay? When did I get taught how to write a business plan, how to make that case to the commissioners, to my fellow colleagues within my department to make that improvement, to take it forward? Now, when I have to develop it, I start with my lean business canvas. We teach you all about that. We break it down into the 9 core components. And once you've populated that, most people can understand your case for change in that area. And we're taking that from the startup world and applying it to healthcare. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So I was just going to go back to Professor Ian Young, really, and talk to you about the importance of the diversity of skills and perspectives in health and social care. You know, from your experience, what do you think that brings, and how, I guess, maybe in some of the case studies that you presented, how do you think that has been of value?
So, I mean, I've been delighted to hear the variety of backgrounds of staff who've come forward, even in the case studies we've heard about today, but also based on personal experience. I think sometimes there's a default position to think that entrepreneurship is something for doctors and ideas, research devices, something for doctors. That's just not true. And certainly examples that we have supported have covered almost the full range of the professions in health and social care. And I think, as Tony said, it's really important that everyone who's providing services to health and social care realizes they're eligible for this, and it's possible to improve and be entrepreneurial in almost any aspect of how those services are delivered, whatever your background is. So, you know, for example, we have an app which was developed by colleagues in social work to help staff in the community to assess stages of child growth. Something which has been downloaded now more than 1 million times by people across the world. And we could give many other examples of ideas and innovation which have come from all parts of health and social care. So I guess one of the key messages as we launch this and support this needs to be that it's for everyone, not just for a limited group of staff.
So thanks, Ian, for reinforcing that. And actually, I've got another follow-up question for you, just particularly around Northern Ireland, which is, how do you think the culture of the Northern Ireland Health Service could be impacted by a further growth of these sorts of innovation programs?
I mean, I think everyone working in our health and social care system at the moment knows just how much clinical pressure staff are under and have been under, and that's likely to continue for a period of time. But in many ways, those pressures, I think, bring greater opportunities. Sometimes the stress of the system makes it clearer to people exactly where the opportunities lie to improve delivery of services. So, you know, I hope that, you know, people, that staff will take the opportunities to reflect on their experiences of the last few months and the ongoing pressures, and to think, you know what, I have an idea for how this could be done better in a way that would make a difference, that would improve services, that would help our system to cope better, and that might act as a catalyst to encourage people to come forward and apply to the programme. I look forward to some novel elevator pitches from the Northern Ireland population. I wonder if Tony's yet seen one done in interpretive dance. Maybe that's a challenge, but we can see.
Fantastic, thanks. And I was going to ask you, Bernadette, and then I'll come to you, Scott, as well. If you think about the kind of the Irish culture, how do you think that's helped you along your way in the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme?
Well, I think we're tenacious. That helps. It's a characteristic. But I think so. I think our tenacity helps us. But I also think that culturally, we're although we like to talk, we're quite shy. And we're certainly brought up, you know, not to show off, like no one likes to show off. And yet in these arenas, you have to. And I think even one time you said, Tony, you have to be more American, you know. And, you know, it's not natural to go out and start, you know, big I am, and that's something I think culturally, you know, we have to learn. Well, I had to learn that, be get a bit more comfortable about that, and I did that by thinking about more for the, you know, this is for the patients and the, you know, the bigger good, you know. But I think that's something. But yeah, but you know, we definitely have energy, we're focused, and we are completers as well. We finish things. We you know, we're as good as our word. And I think that's the culture thing that helps us.
And it is, but and you, Bernadette, because I see that and I work with startups all the time, right? We're afraid to ask. We don't have that American mentality. If you're talking to somebody who's American, they look at you madly as if you're not trying to sell me something. Our problem is that we're afraid. We have this cultural thing. It's like, oh, if I ask somebody to think my idea is not going to be that good, you know, and so, you know, but that's something we're building on. But I've been running around with startups, and I've got, goodness gracious me, I've got doctors who are like 25, 26 who are moving out of, you know, oh, I'm doing all this locum work and everything to start my own business. And, you know, that's Neurovalence and Jason, and, you know, and then I've got like, you know, the only guy I heard of, and excuse me, you know, 29, he's a consultant, and he's doing a lovely CPD. project, and he's come out of it and he's working for himself. So I have loads of examples of people who are being really brave to do it with really good ideas and really clever people. And that's and just like yourself and just like Scott and the other people that we've talked about, that's about the inspiration and the aspiration. And that's what we need to support.
Yeah, I'd absolutely mirror that as well. Before I come to you, Scott, I was just going to say, having moved to Northern Ireland in the last year and spoken to some of the fantastic entrepreneurs in the health and life sciences fields, people will say, oh, I've just developed this, or I've got this idea. What do you think of it? And then you kind of look under the hood. And I would say also, I'd not heard of very much Northern Irish health and life sciences innovation before I moved here. Then you look under the hood and you actually measure it against what's out there in the field, and you think, you've already run the pilot, you're already halfway to market. This is fantastic. You need to get out there, and we just need to connect you. So I would absolutely mirror that. And so if we can get
Joanne, I agree with you. There is so much latent stuff here that we haven't brought out, and that's what Invest in I needs to do, and that's why that's brilliant that we got this program. And that will just bring it in, and it doesn't matter. I can run around and say, here's a grant here or whatever, and we're doing this, and we are investing in it, but it's just about trying to say, hey, we're here to help, because the ideas are great and we're punching above our weight. I
would absolutely agree. Scott, can you top that? What else is there about being Irish that you think would really benefit from the program, or really drive the program forward?
I'm not sure if there's much to say, to be honest. That's amazing point. I mean, tenacity is a good one. I think certainly there's a lot of, we're definitely modest, but I think you can leverage that to your advantage, actually. I speak to a lot of Americans these days because we're working with quite a few, and people don't like being sold to, actually. And when you can actually connect with people on their level and be yourself, and use your background to do that, I think that actually gives you a competitive advantage as well. But absolutely, I think that you can definitely learn a few little tricks. Don't be scared of failure. Put yourself out there, and just for your ideas actually get off the ground as well. So I think it's about using the qualities that we have, but improving yourself in some of those areas too.
Yeah, you want to say something, Tony? Go ahead.
I'm not Irish, although I noted actually, Ian and I share a surname, and I wonder if he realizes that actually the first documented use of that name in the United Kingdom was actually in Essex in 776. So Ian may hail from my part of the woods down in Essex, but so I'm not sure if I am qualified to speak on that. But what I've noticed about Scott and Bernadette is a feature, and I saw it in them. So when I sat next to dinner, just as I started at NHS, to the head microbiologist in Wales, and he said to me, if you're going to be a leader for a nation's healthcare innovation, you need to read Thomas Lewis's book, A General Theory of Love. And he was a well-known psychologist. And he said, because actually, if you want to make change, you've got to get people to fall in love with things. And in that book, he talks about 3 key features, and Bernadette and Scott display these in absolute spades. Number 1 is humility. Number 2 is authenticity. And number 3 is humor. And they're so authentic. You heard that come across in their stories. They're quite humble. You don't have to be loud and brash to get your idea across, and they've got this real gentle humor about them as well. And that helps win hearts and minds. So if winning hearts and minds is a trait of Ireland, then they've both got that in spades.
That's so fantastic to hear. Hopefully I've had another question, and I hope it doesn't bring us all back down to earth a little bit, but it's a very tangible question. And I think it's probably Ian Young who would probably be best placed to answer this. So there's been a question that says, how much bandwidth do we have for digital innovation within, it's probably within health and social care in Northern Ireland, but probably across the whole of the NHS as we roll out electronic healthcare records, so the Encompass programme here. Could Encompass be a big blocker? So I'm not sure what the context is, but would you say there's room for digital innovation, even if we're rolling out the healthcare record?
Absolutely, and in fact, I think Encompass is an enabler in terms of the potential for digital innovation rather than anything else. you know, what it will do. And I appreciate some of you will not be aware of what exactly Encompass is, but what it's going to do is bring together all parts of the healthcare record in one place. And the fact that all of that data is gathered together and brought together, along with, I hope, a new range of permissions and approvals for use with appropriate levels of consent, is going to be an enabler, I think, for digital innovation. And there will be real opportunities there, and ones that I hope we'll begin to talk about more and more over the next 2-3 years.
Thanks, Ian. I absolutely agree, and I think it's broadening out that scope of what innovation is, because often people, well, previously thought, oh, it's a new therapy or it's a new diagnostic. Yes, it is, but actually, I think as Bernadette's talked us through it, and also Scott, your platforms and your service design are all about sort of bringing together those properties that help align and reduce friction in the system. And I think, you know, as we can do that, going back to Tony's point about you know, time to care, that's what we need to bring back. So I just wanted to focus a little bit more about the pit stops and the training, actually, and speak to Scott and Bernadette. And I was going to ask, I'm going to start with Scott this time, I think. What could you describe, I guess, what a typical pit stop is, or what your favourite pit stop is, and what part of that was most valuable to you?
Yeah, sure. So usually what happens is that it's a 2-day thing. That was probably pre-pandemic. Friday night there's founder stories, and then Saturday you'll have some workshops where you'll actually learn some real practical skills. For example, about the lean canvas that Tony talked about finance as well, some basic skills that you just don't really learn anywhere else. And you know, I guess my particular favorite is the founder stories. Actually hearing success stories. You know, again, these people are just like you, but they have actually taken their idea and gone to that next level with it, and learning some little nuggets of advice, and then connecting with those people after they've delivered their presentation. What other opportunities you really get to do that? So yeah, that's sort of my experience with it. And I'm not sure, Tony, will they be in person soon, or are they continuing virtually? Because the virtual ones, I might add, it's a bit like Tony's radio show, to be honest with you. Absolutely fantastic as well.
I'm not sure you get many listeners to a talk radio show if I did, to be honest. So no, we've had to, NHS England have said that we're not planning to move back to in-person meetings until January. We're going to review that then, and it's quite sensible given the data of what's happened with the pandemic. And we're still digital. We switched to digital very quickly 18 months ago. We'll always keep a blend, and so we're always going to still have the digital broadcasting, but we're hoping to blend that with the in-person events coming soon. And it's not hot off the press yet, it's pre the press. What I'm really hoping is for the new cohort, which I'm really hoping to have some colleagues from Northern Ireland join us in, is I'm hoping to host a 2-day conference instead of an evening event to welcome people, to get our amazing first 5 years of the entrepreneur program, to have, you know, pitch sessions just like they do at Y Combinator and other things, but bring it together with some of our best life science industries. So I'm hoping that Joanne, you'll join us, and hopefully Ian, you can help us welcome some Northern Irish clinical entrepreneurs onto our program in a real celebration of UK life sciences and innovation coming out of the National Health Service.
Yeah, fantastic, Tony, and I'm hoping that we can welcome a future pit stop to Northern Ireland as well, and blend in with the rest of the entrepreneurial groups here, so to bring in some of those diversities of skills with, you know, cybersecurity, DevOps, and that whole tech and engineering piece as well. So I think that could be a really exciting meeting to hear about the ideas and think about, you know, what ideas it could spark off in future. So absolutely delighted.
Thanks for asking. I'd love to come, and Bernadette and Scott, I think, are on a promise to help show me round, so that would be really great.
Yeah, so fantastic.
We'll all have as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Yeah. But Bernadette, I was just going to ask you about your sort of pit stop journey, or what your favourite part was.
Yeah, well, I mean, I must say the founder stories are fantastic, and you know, they're so inspirational and and motivating. But also, there's things that you learn in the pit stop that, you know, are sort of off the record, and you also get a lot of information about, you know, things that didn't go well for people, and people are very honest. It's a very, very safe space. So you feel you feel that nothing's too stupid, or, you know, if you've done something that you've failed at, you know, you don't beat yourself up, because you're actually hearing other people share that as well. I think that's priceless. And then from a practical point of view, learning how to use like the lean canvas and building up your value proposition, and, you know, for me, like learning more the commercial language and the commercial skills and confidence of that. Again, you know, really things that you wouldn't get anywhere else. You know, you wouldn't get them, and even reading, you don't really get it until you're in the room with people. And then at the, you know, just being able to catch up. I mean, I said about kindness, that community. I've met people. Scott, I think you and I just met at a coffee or something, you know, like, and we heard each other's accents, and, you know, and then you got going, and everybody, you know, connects. But, you know, you end up with people on your WhatsApp that you know that you can just message and say, hey, I'm stuck. You know, I don't understand this. And some of the most, you know, they're successful, hugely amazing, busy people, and they will get back to you. I mean, it's a community, it's a family of you know, people caring, and that's what you get in those pit stops that I don't think you get anywhere else.
Tony?
Yeah, just to, you know, Bernadette hit, and they always, you know, always remind me of some of the things. You know, Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal and Palantir, says the number of startups to be formed is equal to the number of secrets to be discovered. And I kind of agree. And Bernadette revealed one of the secrets I think we uncovered on the program, which is, I'm afraid science lets us down because there is no journal for negative results. So many people are doing lots of experiments, but they're publishing the positive results in the main. And all the times it didn't work out, we don't get to hear about that, because that doesn't get highly ranked in a journal, and then, you know, go round in the cycle of funding and that kind of thing. But on the entrepreneur program with the founders' stories, people stand up and tell you, you might think I look successful, but, you know, 9 out of 10 times I failed. And it's like Edison, who said, I've never failed, I just found 1,000 ways that didn't work. You know, it's and we share that, and it's become a safe space in which people can talk openly about when things didn't go according to plan, what they've learned, and why you should never do the same thing again. And if only we did that in science, I think it would move forward a lot faster. But we don't like to talk about our failures, but that's what we've uncovered on the program. And that's why people actually leapfrog business planning steps and stages, because they go, I'm so glad you told me. That it's like bad investors, another thing. Taking on board a bad investor at an early stage is a disaster. Even if you think you're desperate for the money and need it, you will regret it later. And they share these things in their little groups, and it becomes like a tribe. You know, they sort of belong, and they're all different. They come from all different backgrounds, and professional and otherwise, and it's quite incredible to see how they kind of become a self-learning set, really, in what they do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tony. I think that's wonderful to hear, and it sort of brings me back to right at the beginning, the push and pull innovations. That's why your voices are so critical, because there's a load of stuff being pushed at you all of the time, but it's not a solution that you can adopt because it doesn't solve your problem. And so it brings us right back to framing the problem appropriately, and then gathering the necessary skills and resources and connections to move you forward. So it's been fantastic. I've noticed the time, could talk all evening, but I wanted to draw this to a close, and really wanted to thank all of our speakers, but also wanted to point out, so within Northern Ireland, we've got Health and Social Care Innovations, who we can go and speak to through Ian, and I think you just need to Google Health and Social Care Innovations. We've also got the link on the website, as well as Invest Northern Ireland as well. I believe there's pitch sessions as well. So if you're not quite ready for the clinical entrepreneur pitching, or you want to practice your minutes pitch, perhaps there's a course that you can go on in the next month to do that, to hone your skills. And those links will also be on the website. There's also Harani, and if you can follow us on Twitter at 4Health Alliance, and also on our LinkedIn. And we also push out many additional things around training, but we'll also be pushing out all these links to the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme and really urge you to apply. So again, it just leaves me to thank Professor Ian Young, Professor Tony Young, Bernadette Porter, Scott Martin and Gary McCausland today for talking to us. And we've got our final slide there as well, with some of the additional webinars there. So thank you very much, everybody. Really enjoyed today, and I'm really excited about the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme coming to Northern Ireland. I can't wait, and I can't wait to welcome you, Tony, Bernadette and Scott, back home for our pit stop.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.